Well, you know, one of my hats is teaching, and they let me speak for 75 minutes uninterrupted, you know, and by then, of course, all my students are sleeping, so it's actually very easy at that point. But before I get started about talking a few things about myself, I wanted to mention that, first of all, of course, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my dear mother, who is in the back there, okay? My mother, Virginia Johnston, did the best she could. Sorry, no, it's not her fault. And she was quite the super volunteer in her time. Actually, super mom. She volunteered a lot for South Hadley. She was a president of KYT, for example, and I won't list all the things, but it gives you some idea. She was very actively involved. But she also taught full-time at Hoyok Community College, and she tried to keep her son out of trouble, which is probably the most difficult job of those. But anyway, obviously I wouldn't be here today or wouldn't have any photographs or been able to do the things without my mother. So good evening, and thank you so much for being here. So let's start with how and why I got into photography. Well, when I was 11 years old, I won the local soapbox derby competition here. And so I went to Akron, Ohio, to the national championships, which was quite an honor. It was quite an exciting experience. So I get there, I get absolutely creamed in my first race, and it's single elimination. So you lose one race, you're out. So I had a lot of time to look at the other racers. But anyway, so, however, it was kind of tough because the person I raced against from Lubbock, Texas, didn't build his own car, I'm pretty sure. It's a little too impressive, okay? I actually built my own car, which is probably why I lost. But, you know, it's amazing, even, you know, at 11, 12 years old, how people would put in tremendous amounts of money into their cars, and their parents would help them substantially. But anyway, that was a learning experience in itself. So that was the bad news. The good news is Kodak sponsored a photography contest, and I won that. So that's how I got started on photography, because Kodak came with their Kodak clowns there, and you took pictures of the Kodak clowns. And so I won that. They gave me a free camera, free film, and everything. So anyway, so that's how I kind of got started in photography. However, I didn't do much photography until I went to UMass Amherst as a student. My dormitory, unbeknownst to me when I moved in, had a dark room. I was the only student with a key to the dark room. It was a nice big black and white dark room. So at UMass, I did a couple different things with that. First of all, I taught a 1-credit course in photography out of that dark room. And so that was the start of me teaching, actually, was by actually photography in terms of that dark room, so by happenstance. So I became a teacher, in a sense, of a college course there, 1-credit college course. Now, while I was at UMass, I did two primary things in terms of photography. The first thing it is, I worked for an entertainment newspaper, a little struggling little entity that you wouldn't even know the name of. But the good news was they got me like backstage passes to concerts, which was really cool. So I would go to these, you know, like I went to Kenny Rogers at the Mass Mutual Center backstage and stuff, you know, took a nice photos of Kenny Rogers. In those days, however, it was film cameras. And I don't know if you know much about stage lighting, but stage lighting is the most challenging lighting you can do. Because you don't know, all of a sudden the light's coming right at you, then it's going that way, this way, that way. And with film, you did not see the photos until, you know, a week later when Kodak gave them back to you. So I had no clue if I got any photos. I think for Kenny Rogers, for example, I probably took, you know, 100, 150. I probably had 2 that I could use. Fortunately, one of them was really good. So anyway, but that was back in the days of film. The second thing I did at UMass, in terms of photography, because I had a dark room, is I did try to entice attractive women on campus to model for me free. That had mixed results, but I was motivated to that. And anyway, in fact, I still use that photographic technique to this day occasionally, with the same kind of mixed results. But anyway, and that also may explain why I did not get a 4.0 GPA at UMass. It was not too close to that. But I did create my own second bachelor's degree. And having created that second bachelor's degree, it was the first time in UMass history that was actually created. And that helped me get a really good job out when I graduated, because first of all, I had 2 undergraduate degrees, not one. I created one, it was a science degree. And so what is now Verizon decided, hey, this guy kind of thinks outside the box. We might be interested in him. So anyway, so I was very fortunate. I had a wonderful experience at UMass. However, I didn't do much photography after UMass. I didn't have a dark room, and stuff. I didn't do much until the South Hadley 250th anniversary celebration, when a person from the Historical Society got in touch with my mother and said, hey, I heard your son does stuff with computers or photography or something. Do you think he'd be interested in doing a calendar as a fundraiser for the South Hadley 250th anniversary celebration? And I said, well, okay, sure. And honestly, I'm thinking, okay, that's like a weekend project. I scan some old photos, I take a few new ones, and I do this volunteer work. That's good for South Hadley and stuff, so that'd be fine. Well, the problem was I went to a few meetings, and I found out that they had a 150th year book, a 200-year book, and so I asked the folks there, it's like, well, who's doing the 250th? That was my key mistake. That's where it started. Being curious can sometimes get you in a heck of a lot of work. So anyway, I didn't end up doing a calendar, but I did end up doing a book, as you know, with 6 other members of the Historical Society. Well, actually 5, and then 6 other people, and I got in this committee, book committee, and I personally spent over 2,500 volunteer hours on the book project. And that's not an exaggeration. I can actually get that verified. And so what happened was I started the book and I thought, this is like really important, because this is like the most important book in South Hadley, and it's going to be that way for the rest of my life. And so I got to do a good job on this. And so I kind of became slightly obsessed with it. If you were around me then, I was pretty tough. Once I get my jaws into something, like a pit bull, and I just don't stop. So anyway, having said that, I was by far the youngest person on the committee. And I tried to motivate some of the other more senior members to do as much work as possible. For example, everyone knows Connie Clancy, right? Super volunteer. So I thought, Connie would be the person to do a section on volunteerism for the book. And so I twisted her arm. Connie did it. I kept on twisting. She finally said no when I said, Connie, what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to do a survey and figure out how many hours there are paid hours out of, let's say, town hall and taxpayer-paid dollars. And then I want you to figure out how many volunteer hours there are that people spend doing things like Falls Fest or this book or whatever. How many hours that add up those, get an estimate of those volunteer hours and the paid government hours. And I guarantee you will find the volunteer hours are much, much more. Okay? And that's what determines our quality of life. Or, that's one of the factors that determines our quality of life. So if those volunteer hours go down, number of people go down, the volunteer hours go down, our quality of life goes down. Anyway, she drew the line there, said, Dale, I'm not doing it. Okay, next book. I'm still hoping. I still occasionally bug her about that. But Connie, for example, while we're on Connie, super volunteer, and of course, obviously associated with libraries. I don't know if people remember, in the 1970s, Connie started a program of lending out video equipment. So when did I start video? Connie Clancy, had that first video camera that I took out, Betamax, this big, huge, heavy thing. I was absolutely horrendously bad at videography. But, I'm always kind of curious, so I rented out, leased out, or whatever you call it, from the library, and that was because of Connie Clancy. And so kind of, came around, again, kind of to Connie and libraries and stuff. So that's why I mentioned that. By the way, 2,500 volunteer hours equates to 1 hour per week for 50 years. Yeah, I did all these statistics, and it's like, okay, 1 hour a week for 50 years. That's how 2,500 hours. Anyway, because I did the fundraising, I scanned all the historical photographs and all this kind of stuff that I could spend way too long talking about. Okay, so anyway, now I'm going to show you some of the features of the book here. And, of course, I started hanging out at the Historical Society, and my mother was a member of the Historical Society for many years. And so the first thing, of course, I had to scan a lot of black and white photographs, okay, for the black and white section of the book. In other words, the first 250 years of South Hadley history. And then I went out, and I went to all the events. We had roughly an event a month. And I went out and I photographed all those. So all those photographs, with a few exceptions, I got some extra help for the parade because the parade was such a huge event. I wanted to make sure that in case something happened to my camera or me, that we'd have other photographers there. So I got a couple other photographers to hang out on the parade there. So we made sure we got good coverage. But anyway, this is my first book, and I did some unusual things. I went to Barnes & Noble, and I hung out there for the best part of a day. Didn't buy anything. They must, if they had me on camera, they'd think like I was a lunatic. I went around, I just looked at covers. I looked how these things were made. What's the difference between perfect binding and stitch binding and all that. I kind of gave myself a crash course on how to make a book. And I looked at all kinds of different combinations for covers. And I figured, well, I like gold. It's kind of regal. It's kind of like, anniversary. So I said, I need gold on the cover. And being a photographer, I always like things set on black because it really sets off something. So I said, okay, it's gold and black. That's going to be it. So then, anyway, I was talking with the person in South Hadley, and I'm starting to learn South Hadley history and stuff. And I didn't realize it going through high school, but South Hadley has kind of two areas of town, if you haven't kind of noticed that maybe, which I was like totally naive to. And I just went through high school, and I loved everyone, of course, right? So I didn't get this, us and them type thing. And technically, I'm from the Falls because I first lived in the Falls, and then moved to the high ground. No, sorry. So I couldn't resist. It was a cheap shot, but fun. So I've been in both areas of town, according to some people, that there's two areas. So I thought, okay. And I didn't realize how entrenched this was. I mean, people were really serious about this. I'm thinking, where does this come from? Anyway, so then as I learned more history and stuff, I kind of got it, So anyway, so I made sure that, first of all, it was going to be a coffee table book that someone would be proud to have on their coffee table. And two, that if you were a falls type, orientation, you'd feel comfortable with the river photo. And that painting, by the way, is on the wall as you walk in here. Okay, I took that painting. It was done by Nina Decker in high school. Beautiful rendition of a sketch, I believe a pencil sketch. And then for folks that feel more comfortable about the common area of town, I put that on the other side. And then, of course, I kind of built it with that in mind. So as you go through it, you'll see the balance between the churches and the falls, the churches in the center, because we've had 5, in the center, for example. And so I'd go through that very methodically, so I didn't, so I wasn't one-sided or another. Okay, so anyway, so for those that haven't seen this, I'll just quickly kind of do some. I always have to do something challenging. It's a masochistic kind of thing for me. I can't help it. I got this gorgeous painting, first major painting of the Commons, and then I thought, well, I can't put the frame around it because the frame is too big. It's like the frame out there is too big, because I want to maximize the actual painting on the cover. So I thought, okay, I gotta make my own frame. Oh no. So I go to Arts Unlimited at Village Commons, and I photograph just corners, until and then I go back to my computer and say, yeah, I like that corner the best because it's thin, it's gold, and yeah, that's gonna work. So then I generated this entire frame from one corner on my computer, okay? And so that, by the way, took a few hours of those 2,500, that whole process just for that. And then, I did a replicate also for this, which is an aerial helicopter photograph in 2003 of the Commons. By the way, see all those trees that we don't have anymore? Notice all those trees? Yeah, we used to have a lot of trees, a lot of coverage. Now we don't. And as you know, Frank, we can talk about that little story too for a little while. Sorry. And then you flip this out, and you see kind of the vertical structures. And again, I want to make sure I have falls and centered covered in terms of that as soon as I could in the book. So it's very methodical. All right, so then the back cover, of course, has to have a similar thing. So we have the painting, and then we have the aerial photograph of the falls. And then, of course, I got to get this as complex as possible because I'm a masochist. So then I get the nice view of the entire town in a helicopter photo. And, of course, you see some of that aerial coverage here. And then the big advertiser, I'll give him a plug again, was Luke Burnell. I twisted his arm for the most amount of money because I had gone to Sheld one day. I tried to figure out, where's the money in town. So it turns out I had the misfortune of looking on Sheld's balance sheet, had a lot of cash. So I thought, I'm going to go to Sheld's board. I'm going to say, I would like a lot of cash. Because I didn't really want to have to, raise like $50 at a time or $100 at a time. So I go to Sheld's board meeting. I usually prepare pretty well for my presentations, very well prepared. The board was impressed, and I said, okay, yeah, we'll give you like $10,000 or $12,000. I went out like floating when I went out. Oh, this is so nice. I'm not going to have to get $100 here, $100 there. I get a call like a few days later. Well, Dale, sorry, we asked our lawyers, and they weren't too excited about that. So, well, how much are you going to give me? I said, well, nothing. So anyway, and then, of course, this thing is replayed. As it's like 15 years later. I had the same issue with Sheldon, the Chamber of Commerce, but I won't go into that. Anyway, so I tried to get these big donations. So I went to, who else has money? Mount Holyoke College. So what did I say? Hey, I'll put in a section about Mount Holyoke College in the book if you give us a lot of money. So I think I asked for, I was going to ask them for $10,000. And I won't mention the person's name that was on the committee, but I told her, I'm going to go to Mount Holyoke College. I'm going to ask for $10,000 because Sheld just, I thought I had 10 at Sheld, and they turned me down, so I'm going to go to Mount Holyoke. And she goes, you can't do that. I go, what do you mean? Watch me. Watch me. Because I knew that no one likes to fundraise, and I didn't fundraise in that point. I have no interest in fundraising. I had a few other things I had to do. So I didn't want to do it, but I figured, you got where the money is. So I go to Mount Holyoke, and I talked to, I don't know, was it Jesse Lytle maybe? I forget who the first person was. And I asked him, I don't know, for some outrageous amount. And they didn't give it to me, but they gave me half the amount. So, yes. Okay, yes. But now, of course, we had to make sure we had a nice big section on them in the book. But no, just kidding. We would have had that anyway. So Mount Holyoke was very nice to us, and so was Luke Burnell in terms of some major donations. But it turns out, this turned out really well, that I didn't just have a few people that funded the book. Because what it meant was my whole strategy changed and said, okay, I got to go out to all these small businesses and people that are in the town and ask them for smaller donations. And what that did was it documented all of these businesses and organizations that were in the town at 2003. So it actually turned out to be a wonderful thing and a heck of a lot more work for myself. But so, I have to go and ask people to pay for a page at a time type thing, in terms of their. And then for the nonprofits, I generally would just do the advertisement for them, like a KYT or something. But anyway, so it turned out very well because not only did we document the people and the history, but also the businesses and stuff and the organizations that were here at the time. So it's a lot of more work, but it turned out very well, I think, in terms of purposes of the book. Okay, a few other quick things here. Okay, so at the front and back, let's see. Oh, so I always have these, ideas. I can't help it. And so I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if we had simultaneous timelines of South Hadley history and U.S. history for 250 years? Kind of chronologically coordinated there. Yeah. I did not realize how difficult that would be in terms of the book. And when you delete a page, it's not like today you have, word processing and like redoes your footnotes for it and all that kind of stuff. No, it's like every time one little thing changed, I have to change like pages and pages of stuff. Anyway, I twisted Ted Belsky's arm for this one. I said, Ted, I need 250 years of South Hadley U.S. history. Is that a problem? So it apparently was to begin with, but I have that way of wearing them down occasionally, so I kept on them for a while. He's already doing the canal portion, the South Hadley Canal, which he did a wonderful job on. Anyway, so he did a nice job, and so I had a fun time laying it out, and so you have these simultaneous timelines that go for 90 pages in the book, roughly. So it's really cool because you get to see what's going on in South Hadley in U.S. history. Okay, so I will, with just one more item, indulge me for one more here, feature. So kind of referencing maybe back at UMass, I always thought it'd be fun to do a centerfold for a book. But I never thought that Marilyn Ishler would be the one that would be in the centerfold. Anyway, so so this is a double gatefold, okay? And so I thought, it'd be kind of cool to have fireworks, kind of patriotic theme and stuff. This float here, if you recall, was in the 250th, and it was by Jim Menard and his family. Made this beautiful cake float for the 250th. So I got Marilyn and the government representative there, John Sybeck, together to get in front of the float, that kind of stuff. So anyway, so this is a double gatefold, and it's basically 100 years of parades. So this was 100 years ago, this was 50 years ago, and this was 2003. So, and it turns out it has one of the same organizations, the church and KYT, that are represented in kind of different parades there. So that was kind of fun. So that is some of the book, just in case you have not gotten to see it, or you didn't find those foldouts, which are kind of somewhat hidden. So as I mentioned, we had to raise quite a lot of money. I think we raised over $40,000, and I was principal fundraiser in that regard. And I actually raised more money for that than I got paid on my job that year. So it was quite an effort, monetarily as well as time-wise. My interest in multimedia really accelerated when I was doing this book. I would say, because of those volunteer hours I put into it, it really helped develop my skills in multimedia and my interest in multimedia. So I really, credit the book to this stuff that I've done after for really being the book. Okay, now, so it was advertised in Town Reminder I was going to talk about aerial stuff, which I didn't want it to be that big of a thing, but they put it in there, so I got to talk about aerials a little. So I was hired by the library's architects of Johnson Roberts that designed this to go up and take aerial helicopter photos of it. Because as you may have figured out by this point, that it has a curvature part of the library, right? And you cannot see that walking in the front door. You have no clue whatsoever that this is designed a library, which I didn't either until I went up in a helicopter. It's like, really? Wow, I'm looking at my photos after, it's like, it really is curved. And it's curved to match the curvature of the Connecticut River, okay? And so anyway, so they hired me to go up, and I needed to rent a helicopter. And so I go and find out, where I can get a helicopter and all that kind of stuff. And I go to Northeast Helicopters in Connecticut. And I didn't actually go there, I'm sorry. I called and I reserved a helicopter. Well, when I reserved it, I didn't realize what helicopter I'd be going up in. Because a couple years before, I went up with the state police. They had this nice big helicopter, and it's a four-seater, and it's got doors and everything. Well, unbeknownst to me, until a couple days before I was going to go on this helicopter, it's a teeny-weeny little training helicopter. And it's like really small. And they take off the door so you can shoot through without, any window or anything. And so literally, like, my hand is, it's in air here. It's like, it's like, and I don't get scared of heights, compared to the average person, but this thing was pretty scary, And so anyway, but then it dawned on me that the architects also, because I bid it for photos and video, that I was going to take this 360 shot of the library, continuous shot. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, Spielberg can do it, I can do it, right? Yeah. So just kidding. So I do this 360 shot of video, continuous shot. But then I find out, as I'm talking more about this helicopter, this thing bounces around like this, because it's a little teeny-weeny helicopter. It's got an engine about the size of a lawnmower. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, but really, so I say, oh, no, what am I going to do? I can still get still photos if I have fast enough shutter speed, but video is going to be a problem. So I do my due diligence research and stuff, and I find out that there's this handheld gyroscope that has 4 gyroscopes that you can attach to your video camera. So, okay, well, that's great. So I rent that. Of course, the problem was I had already bid the job, so now I get this other piece of equipment that was a little expensive. I didn't make a penny off this job, as it turned out, because of getting this extra gyroscope and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, when all said and done, the stills came out very well, as you could see by some of these photos, and the video came out okay. There's a little, and I didn't have any idea of how challenging it was for this really talented helicopter pilot to keep me constantly facing into the library while he circled around. And so it takes a lot of skill to do that, particularly when this thing's going like this, and there's air currents from the dam and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it was a lot more involved than I thought it would be. Of course, now I know. Of course, now I wouldn't use a helicopter, I'd use a drone. Anyway, so that gives you a little idea of the trials and tribulations of photographing and videoing this library. I'll finish up my talk today with some of my favorite locations to take photographs in South Hadley. Obviously, some you've seen. This location here is always fantastic in the spring because you have the dam that when that water is going over the dam, it's unbelievable. You know, it's literally one of the few places in the entire Northeast that you can get that experience. And it's better outside, but you know, even from this room, it's fantastic. So that's a nice area to take photographs. There's the mountain ranges. You know, one of the things that we're blessed with here in terms of our natural beauty is Mount Holyoke and Mount Tom. And so those are always a good source of photographic ideas. And then we do have a traditional town common, and we have the Yard Tavern and the Congregational Church. That's the 5th church, but if you think about the previous renditions of it that were some wooden, then that's kind of the quintessential town common, which you can still kind of see in Granby, you know, with the wood church and the common. We have a kind of a nicer defined common, I think, than Granby's, but that's always, you know, a good photographic source. And then, of course, Mount Holyoke College, you know, one of the most beautiful campuses anywhere. And then I am so blessed to be within walking distance. You know, some of these photos you see of these are within walking distance, you know, of where I live. And by the way, this is Bob Robertson's bench. I always check out the names on all these benches. I can tell you whose benches are whose, like almost anywhere. You might check Ed Clancy's out on top of the Summit House. I have a bench for Ed Clancy. He's over 100 years old now. And he stayed that way because he hiked every day to and from Mount Holyoke, I think, through the woods. Anyway, so those are some of the things I enjoy photographing. As you know, I've been the volunteer to do our annual report cover since the 250th anniversary. So every year I come up with something to show South Hadley, and this one is kind of a fun one. You also notice in the design is I always almost do wraparounds, you know, because I like a bigger canvas. You know, the bigger canvas, the better. And it also kind of sometimes will take a person from, you know, seeing it's connected and go to the back cover, which many times they wouldn't see. So those are practical reasons. Also, I can hide my credits a little better on the back page, so someone doesn't get, you know, concerned. So anyway, this was a fun one, and this was one of the few ones I actually didn't take all the photographs. The project manager had these 2 photographs, and so I made a composite here. And I just thought, wow, this is really cool. All the kids, you know, were there in a nice lineup working on it. And then, you know, the school's all about the kids. It's not about the politicians, but you got to put the politicians in because there's space. And then Jill Flanders, who is the principal, was here earlier, and I got a nice photo from someone of her with the kids. So. That's when things are really fun, when you can you know, also get other people involved and use their photographs and make something nice. On my lengthy to-do list, I will probably be at some point converting this to a digital form so that other South Hadleyans or others can have a little more access to it. This is at the library here, but you know, online is a little easier for many folks, particularly younger generations these days. So that's on my to-do list. And kind of finishing up with the 250th, one of my favorite quotes from John Quincy Adams, John Adams' son, of course, and both from lineage from Massachusetts. And I put this in the book is who we are is who we were. And that's one reason why history is so vitally important to people, to himself or herself. Because if you don't know who you were, you don't know who you are. Whether it's my mother, I'm obviously, genetically with, my mother and environmentally and stuff, but it's true for all of us. If you don't know something about your environment, that's really sad, because then you really don't know about yourself. So hopefully you'll get an opportunity, if you haven't, to check out the South Hadley 250th anniversary book, or refer it to someone, and they'll find out a little more about themselves as well. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Now, if you have any questions, I will entertain questions, unless they make me look really stupid.
How come South Hadley never had any clouds?
Good question, Mike. I am a blue sky type of guy. I don't know if anyone knows the Remelards, Larry and Phyllis Remillard. I had the real fortune of going with them to France one time, skiing. And they were such good hosts and hostess, I made them a book. And you get a pretty significant book. Just, made it for them because I had such a good time. But in France, high up in the elevation, up on the glaciers, for some reason the sky's bluer. It's surreal, deep, rich blue. And so ever since then, it's like I just yearn for really blue skies. And the other reason is because I use a polarizer on my camera, a circular polarizer. And that's so that you can cut down on reflections. How you have the hood of a car, and it'll be really glaring? Well, a circular polarizer you can adjust to cut out that glare. Kind of like Polaroid sunglasses, but the difference is you can adjust them on a circular basis. So polarization, just like Polaroid glasses, make colors deeper and richer. And then, I'm pretty good with Photoshop, so, I have to say, Bob's background here probably wasn't quite that vibrant, but I can't resist. It's kind of the artistic license, so to speak. And interestingly enough, with the 250th book, I did almost none of that because I realized it was a documentary book. It was not, Dale trying to juice colors book. And so everything that you see in there was actually as I took it, pretty much. Just a straight photograph with one exception. There's a picture there. The last photograph I included in the book was in December of that year, and it was of the statue, and it had a beautiful sunset. We rarely get beautiful sunsets on the town common, but for some reason, behind that statue was gorgeous sunset, and so there was wires there. Okay, there was overhead wires, and I had to eliminate them because it just wrecked it seeing these wires go behind the statue. So that was the only photograph, I think, almost the entire book, and there's a lot of photographs in there, both historic and contemporary. And I think that was the only photograph I altered, significantly, because I could not see those wires. And when that statue was put up, of course, there were no wires there. So I took a little license there. But thank you for your question. It's a great observation. I do like that surreal blue. But that photograph behind Jane there, that really intense blue, it really was an incredible day there. It wasn't obviously that blue, but that's a result of a circular polarizer and catching the sun at the precise angle that produces that kind of rich color. So that was a perfect time of day. And that's a great example of a serendipity or whatever. I just happened, I was driving in my car, and at that time I usually kept my camera in my car, and I'm going, wow, it's a gorgeous day. Gee, I should go and see how the fall foliage is doing. So I get out of my car, park it, I go and say, oh, whoa, this is this is the day. And the reason is because there's no wind. When you get wind, the water ripples, right? You get ripples in the water, and there's no leaves on the water. It's pristine. It was surreal. I said, okay, I got to take as many photos. And I just took as many photos as I could until my battery ran out or my film ran out or something. And then also the time of day had passed, because it also was at the precise time of day that those combination of factors came into play. So thank you for the question, Mike. Yeah, Dory. A price list. I have, I was on vacation before this, so I didn't have time to get everything there, but I have a website that the easiest way to get to it is photovideo.us. I get the US extension. They stand for the United States. Many people don't realize that, the .coms are usually taken, so it's photovideo.us. On there, and if I was connected, I was going to show you just a slideshow from there, but they had problems with this screen. On there, you can actually buy the photos. Yeah, all different sizes, and even coffee mugs, and I mean, it's unbelievable. So spend as much time as you like on it. If there's some special request for something, then I do that different. And as you can see, I actually print on all kinds of things. This is metal. I print on cloth, all kinds of things. It's absolutely phenomenal what you can print on. You can print on stone. I don't know how they do it. Yeah. I didn't. Well, I took a little video, but that is one thing I found extraordinarily difficult to take sun or moon, because first of all, you need like a telescope, like this guy Gollin here. He has like you can get up close. It's very difficult unless you have a very long lens to get in close enough, really, and if it's a light enough lens so it can take a quick shutter speed so it's not moving, because those things actually move, of course, and when you're tight in on it, it's not easy, and so that's one of those few subjects through the years I get very frustrated about. I got one nice photo of the moon rising over the Skinner Mountain House, and that was very nice. And it looks very big. It's kind of like the Springfield Union photographer got a absolutely terrific photo of that. It just looks huge over the house. So I have gotten one nice photo of a moon. But no, I was out on the back porch with my mother trying to have her look through my screen so she wasn't looking at it directly. You just barely saw it because there's clouds around here. Yeah. It was. Actually, on Facebook, Larry Du Bois is kind of funny. Everyone, does Facebook and posts things on Facebook. So Larry posts this photograph on it, and it's kind of dark and dim and stuff. And Larry's apologizing for it, and everything, nice and pristine. And so I post back. It's like, Larry, that's so artistic. It's beautiful. And it was really cool. It's not the pristine, blue sky, background of, white and black. It was really, I don't try not to lie to people. I thought it was very artistic. So. Other questions? Yes?
Is film photography obsolete today?
Excellent question. First of all, I'll tell you when I converted. In 2003, I was taking so many photos at these events that in the first half of the year, I took scads of photos because I had an old film camera, because I hadn't really taken many photographs for like 20 years before then. So I had this old camera, taking scads of film and spending a truckload, and I figured, wait a minute, how I have to raise the money to pay for that. So it's like, okay, I'm spending all this money on film and stuff that I essentially go out and raise the money so I can reimburse myself for it. And I thought, maybe now's the time to go to digital. So halfway through the year, I cut over from film to digital, like the parade, that centerfold, the fireworks, I think was my first digital that I'd done. And I've never taken a film since. I've never taken a roll of film since 2003, literally. It's not an exaggeration. Because I'm pretty comfortable with the computer, so the workflow from digital is very, very nice to go from the digital camera to a computer and do Photoshop type stuff. But anyway, in answer to your question, today there's very limited. And that's why Kodak and Polaroid have all had trouble surviving, that end of their business, or period, because of that big drop-off in film. There's just very limited applications that it makes any kind of sense to do film these days. But the interesting thing about film is it has infinite, relative to digital, resolution. And so, in other words, when you go in a dark room and you project an image on the wall, the negative has excellent resolution. And so until the digital cameras could catch up with the resolution of film, when I first started with the digital camera, I couldn't afford to get a real high-end camera that had high resolution. So at that point in time I switched, film was definitely still better, no question about it. But for me, workflow-wise and cost-wise, it just made sense to go to digital. But for many years after that, from 2003 through, 2010-ish or something, you could still get a better technical photo on a resolution basis from film than you could in digital. So yes, excellent question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mhm. Yes. Oh yeah, because there's still a huge base of stuff out there. In fact, I just sent some out, some high school gymnastic Super 8 film that Vern Monjo has taken of the gymnasts, and I had that switched to digital. It did not come out too well, but you kind of see, I could kind of see myself, tumbling around or whatever in gymnastics. So I wanted to convert that, sooner than later because film deteriorates. Particularly that Super 8 kind of stuff is awful. It's awful in the first place, but it deteriorates. I did a little gymnastics. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We had a great team. Actually, we had an excellent class. In fact, some long-standing school system people remember a class of '77, and usually positively. But we really had an excellent class, and that translated. We had an undefeated gymnastic team that year. Yeah, it was quite a team, and I, was a part of it. Mm-hmm. Sure. Ha. Ooh. Well, let's see. That's a tough one. It's like what's your favorite kid? Who's your favorite kid, right? It's like. Probably the one behind Jane is my favorite. That's not my favorite print of it, but that one or the double one there that you see the mountain range with Ham and McGregor Hall, and then underneath it Upper Lake. And because it's that serendipity, it just happened, right place, right time, and like, wow, no one else is going to get this because this is really good. Yeah, and I've actually haven't gotten back to it now that you mention that, which will spark my interest in that. I do like reflections. I find reflections. I actually like reflections of people. I have this. I think it's maybe in my portfolio. If you have any interest, this is kind of a general portfolio book. Has like a whole range of kind of photos in it. I think maybe in there is someone in a wedding dress who. Was in this tri-mirror, like the old mirror that like these three different kind of. I like reflections, yeah, but I haven't done many recently. Now that you mention it, but because you can do a lot of creative things with it, and I like reflections from water for sure, because the quest for me is to get it so literally if you flip that upside down, you cannot tell what is water and what is sky. That was my objective for that one. If you flipped it upside down, you could not tell which was sky and which is water. And I have actually done that for a few photos. I've done that to people. I've said, okay, which is sky, which is, and it's ambiguous. So that's kind of the challenge there. Which also goes back to the original question about the blue stuff. And so I would try to get that balance. Not that it's real to your eyes, with particularly if you don't have Polaroid sunglasses on, but it's just, I have fun trying to replicate that, real or unreal. Any other questions?
Well, just getting up and saying that you are a treasure for the stuff. That you really deeply appreciate all the work you've done. The photography is fantastic. And the spirit of volunteerism is just mind-blowing. So I had to get up and say that. And I feel
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. And please feel free to have any coffee, snacks. If you want to look at any of the portfolio book or whatever, or if you have any other questions, I don't mean to end it. It just. Yeah, the exhibit's here through the end of August, so another week. Now, these things on the tables I won't have, that kind of stuff. But oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you.